Brielle and I had been married a little over 5 years. We were never the kind of couple people wrote novels about, but we had rhythm. Quiet dinners, weekend movies, those soft, knowing glances across the couch when we laughed at the same joke. She loved structure, and I loved being the one who held it up. For a while, I thought that was enough. Stability, routine, the safe kind of love that doesn't demand too many questions. Then the rhythm started missing beats. A few months back, she became busy in a way that didn't match our old life. Late nights, endless calls, her phone always flipped face down on the table. Every explanation sounded reasonable. "Work needs me," she'd say with a tired smile. And I believed her, because that's what trust does. It fills in the blanks you don't want to look at too closely. When she asked for space, I gave it. When she said she was exhausted, I cooked, cleaned, tried to be lighter around her. Nothing broke loudly. It was a quiet kind of drifting, like a door closing one slow inch at a time. I kept telling myself we were just in a rough season. Every couple hits a wall, right? You push through. You wait it out. But her laughter started sounding like something she rehearsed in a mirror. Kisses landed on my cheek and left no warmth. She sat beside me on the couch, but felt 3 rooms away. Deep down, some part of me knew that whatever we'd built was already leaning. I just didn't have proof yet until 3:12 a.m. I woke up without knowing why. The room was dark, the kind of stillness that makes every sound feel amplified. Then her phone lit up on the nightstand, a rectangle of pale light cutting across the wall. A short vibration followed, sharp and precise, the kind of buzz you only hear when the whole house is holding its breath. Brielle didn't move. She rolled slightly, pulling the blanket higher over her shoulder like this was a practiced motion. The light brushed across her skin, then faded. I didn't reach for the phone. I just stared at the screen long enough to see the preview before it dimmed. For words. You make me alive. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. There was a strange, heavy calm instead, like my body had already known and was relieved the guessing part was over. I memorized the time, the words, the exact tone of that vibration. Then I turned away and stared at the ceiling until the night shifted into a dull gray morning. By the time the first streak of light slipped through the curtains, a quiet plan had already started forming in my mind, not for confrontation, not for drama, for clarity. At 7, Brielle was in the kitchen humming some tune under her breath. The morning looked normal. Coffee brewing, toast on a plate, her hair pulled back in that loose knot she always wore on lazy days. But normal was already dead. It just hadn't gotten the memo. She glanced up when I walked in. "You're up early," she said, smiling like nothing in. Our world had cracked. "Couldn't sleep," I answered, pouring coffee, watching her fingers tap lightly against the mug. There was a pause between us, a thin, fragile silence stretched tight. Then she broke it. "I need to tell you something," she said. I didn't rush her. I just waited. "I slept with Micah yesterday." The words came out clean, practiced. "I didn't want to lie to you anymore. You deserve honesty." Her voice didn't tremble. It sounded like she was reading from a script she'd rehearsed in the mirror a dozen times, carefully choosing every syllable for maximum righteousness. I took a slow sip of coffee. "Congrats," I said. Her smile cracked. "That's all you're going to say? Seems like you already said everything." "I thought you'd be angry," she whispered. I replied calmly. 3 months ago. The silence after that didn't just sit in the room. It filled it. She started talking then, trying to wrap the fallout. Betrayal in prettier words, closure, unfinished feelings, needing to understand her past, not wanting secrets between us. Each phrase slid over me like background noise in a waiting room. While she talked about honesty, I was mentally tracing back over the last few years every bill I covered, every favor, every sacrifice that had looked like love at the time. Rent, insurance, her abandoned course, the trip where she twisted her ankle, and I paid the hospital bill without blinking. Gifts she'd called thoughtful and later treated like props. The numbers gathered quietly in the back of my mind. That night, she fell asleep on the couch, a blanket draped over her legs, a half-finished apology hanging in the air between us. The TV flickered against the walls, but I wasn't watching it. I sat at the dining table, the same place we'd once blown out candles and made promises, and opened my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment, then moved with steady purpose. Subject line: separation, private and quiet. I wrote to Anya, my lawyer. Nothing dramatic, nothing emotional, just facts. I told her I wanted a clean split, no court scenes, no public mess. Just numbers, records, a line drawn straight through the middle of the life Brielle and I had pretended was still intact. When I hit send, I didn't feel vindicated. I felt balanced, like I'd stepped off a sinking floor and found solid ground. Anya's reply came faster than I expected. I'll handle it discreetly. We'll document everything. I'll prepare a reconciliation statement. Those last two words lodged in my mind and stayed there. Reconciliation statement. Not revenge, not rage. Just math. I closed the laptop and looked over at Brielle sleeping on the couch, her phone resting inches from her hand, dark and quiet for now. She had no idea that while she was chasing honesty with someone else, I'd finally decided to be honest with myself. In the morning, she would wake up thinking the worst was over because she'd confessed. She'd think the truth had set her free. She wouldn't know that the real price of that honesty hadn't even arrived yet. Brielle woke up the next morning with the kind of soft, relieved expression people wear after confessing something they think absolves them. She stretched, blinked, and gave me a careful smile, as if expecting some leftover anger to rise from the night before. But there was nothing left to rise. Not for her, not for us. While she brewed coffee, I slipped quietly into the bedroom and began gathering the receipts, the statements, the digital records I had stored over the years without giving them meaning. Back then, they were just proof of payments, the kind you keep in case something goes wrong. Now, they were a map, one that traced every investment I had made into a marriage she treated like an optional subscription. By the time I left for work, Enya had already emailed me a list of documents she needed. I responded with attachments, numbers lined up neatly in their own columns. It felt strangely calming. The more I typed, the clearer everything became. When emotions collapse, order is the only thing that keeps you upright. At lunch, Sarah noticed my unusual stillness. "You seem weirdly calm," she said, narrowing her eyes. "Calm's cheaper than chaos," I replied. She laughed like I'd made a joke, but I wasn't joking. I couldn't afford chaos anymore, not with Brielle, not with myself. That evening, Anya sent the first draft. Relationship reconciliation statement. A clean document, structured like the balance sheet of a quiet, dying marriage. At the bottom, total, $90,000 paid in full your way. Seeing it spelled out wasn't cruel. It was accurate. It was the truth that Brielle always insisted she wanted. When I returned home, she was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, her leg tucked under her body, her posture unusually small. She looked up as I walked in. "We should talk," she said softly. I set my keys down. "About what?" "Us. What happened? Maybe we can fix it." "I was honest with you, Damon. That should mean something." I studied her face, the way her mouth trembled just slightly. For a moment, I searched for the woman I married, the one who once laughed so freely she made strangers smile. But she wasn't there anymore. Not in the way that mattered. "It does mean something," I said quietly. "It means the balance finally makes sense." She frowned, confused. "What does that even mean?" "You'll understand tomorrow." She didn't sleep close to me that night. She curled up on her side of the bed, facing the window, her breaths uneven. I stayed awake, listening to the soft rustle of sheets, the distant hum of cars outside, not out of anxiety, just anticipation. A calm, steady readiness. At 9:04 a.m. the next morning, the doorbell rang. A single, sharp sound that cut through the quiet. Brielle padded to the door in her robe, hair barely brushed, holding a glass of orange juice she'd only sipped once. A courier stood there with a brown envelope. "Delivery for Mrs. Brielle," he said. She smiled faintly, probably assuming it was something sentimental from me. A peace offering or olive branch. She signed, closed the door, and walked back to the table where I was sitting. She tore the envelope open with her thumb, casual and unprepared. The first page slid halfway out before she froze. The firm's logo glinted at the top. My lawyer's name beneath it. Her breath hitched. Then she pulled the document fully out, and her eyes started scanning. Faster and faster, her face draining of color. "What is this?" she whispered. "A love bill," I said calmly. "A what?" "Every bill, rent, gift, or favor I covered. 90,000 in total. Paid in full your way." "You can't be serious, Damon." "Completely." She blinked hard, rereading the fine print. "This is insane. You're putting a price on us?" "No," I said evenly. "I'm putting a price on everything that wasn't love." She let out a brittle laugh. "This isn't funny." Neither was the message I saw at 3 a.m. Her jaw clenched. "You looked at my phone." "I didn't have to." She stared at me, eyes glassy but dry. "You're humiliating me." "No," I replied, sliding my chair back. "You did that to yourself. I'm just closing the account." Her breath stuttered as she tried to speak. I made a mistake." "Then, this is the receipt." I grabbed my jacket and headed toward the door. "Where are you going?" she called out, voice cracking. "Out," I said. "Anywhere quiet." The door shut behind me before she could find another justification to drape over the truth. I drove aimlessly for an hour before pulling into a small apartment complex lot on the edge of town. Just sitting there, hands on the wheel, listening to the ticking engine as it cooled. The world felt wider than it had in months. By the third day, Brielle began posting vague quotes online. "Honesty hurts, but it heals. Growth means owning your mistakes." Her friends began messaging me. "Are you two okay?" "We're balancing the books," I replied. At work, Sarah noticed the shift again. "You look like you slept for the first time in forever," she said over lunch. "I did," I answered. She nodded slowly, like she sensed something had changed but didn't know what. Later that week, Brielle appeared in the office parking lot. Her eyes were red, makeup smeared at the corners. "Damon, please," she begged. "We can fix this. It was one mistake. You already paid for it." "This isn't you," she whispered, shaking her head. "You're not cruel." "I'm not," I said gently. "I'm precise." That was the moment she finally broke shoulders, slumping, tears falling in slow, helpless streaks. "I was trying to be honest," she sobbed. "Isn't that what you always wanted?" I looked at her directly. "Honesty is not a free pass, Brielle. It's a cost. You just didn't expect the invoice." She covered her face and walked away, her steps unsteady. 2 days later, Anya called. "She signed the divorce acknowledgement," she said. "I'll file it today." Quietly, as requested. And just like that, the separation moved from emotion to paperwork, from heartbreak to process, from chaos to clarity. But Brielle's reaction and mediation the moment everything cracked open fully was still waiting for her. And she had no idea how raw that room was about to become. The mediation office sat tucked between two quiet buildings downtown, the kind of place people walked past without noticing. Gilda, the retired judge who handled private sessions, ran her practice their neutral walls, calm lighting, the kind of stillness meant to keep emotions from spilling too loudly. I arrived 10 minutes early. Brielle was already inside, dressed in a sharp black suit, her posture straight but her eyes restless. The moment she saw me, something in her expression faltered, like she'd rehearsed confidence but couldn't quite hold on to it. Gilda gestured for us to sit. "Let's keep this civil," she said. "We're here to clarify final terms." Her voice held the kind of steady authority that didn't invite argument. Brielle spoke first. "This $90,000 list is a joke," she said, lifting the papers with trembling fingers. "You can't invoice someone for love, Damon." I replied calmly. "I didn't invoice you for love. I invoiced you for everything that wasn't love." Her lawyer cleared his throat. "Mr. Damon, emotional distress isn't measurable. You can't assign a price tag. That's why," I said, sliding a neatly organized folder across the table. "I only included measurable things. Bills, repairs, tuition, insurance, receipts for every cent." Gilda looked through the documents, nodding slowly. "This is thorough," she said. "It's not emotional. It's factual." Brielle let out a strained laugh. "You all make it sound like I bought a house instead of ruining a marriage." "Sometimes," I said quietly. They cost the same. She blinked rapidly, her eyes glistening. You really don't love me anymore, do you? I did, I answered. That's how we got here. For a moment, the room fell silent. Even Gilda didn't speak. The truth between us sat heavy enough to hold the entire space still. Brielle swallowed hard, gathering the loose pages of the statement. Her hands shook. Her voice, when it came, cracked open like thin glass. You win, she whispered. There's no win, I replied. Just zero. She stood abruptly, gathered her things, and walked out without looking back. Her lawyer followed a beat later. I remained seated until the door clicked shut, letting the final thread of our shared life dissolve in the quiet. Then I stood, thanked Gilda, and walked out into the fading afternoon light. 3 months passed in a rhythm I hadn't felt in years, steady, calm, mine. Anya called one morning while I was brewing coffee. Funds transferred, she said. Full amount. She wired it this morning. Divorce final by Friday. Already? Yes. She wanted everything closed quickly. I thanked her and ended the call. The apartment felt bigger somehow, as if the walls had space to breathe again. I stood there, steaming mug in hand, letting the clarity sink in. That afternoon, I received an unmarked envelope. I recognized the handwriting instantly. Inside was a short note. I didn't mean to destroy us. I thought honesty would make things easier. I was wrong. I hope you find peace, even if it's not with me. I read it twice. Then, I placed it in the same folder as the settlement papers, not to remember her, but to remember the lesson. Later that day, I drove to the coast. The waves moved in long, steady rolls, like the world had its own breathing pattern. I sat there until the sky shifted from blue to gold, listening to the ocean level itself over and over again. For once, my mind wasn't replaying anything. No apologies, no explanations, no messages glowing at 3 to 12 a.m. Just the sound of water, balancing itself like a ledger finally at zero. That night, back home, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. A soft vibration, too familiar not to trigger something in my chest. I glanced over, expecting the echo of an old wound. Instead, it was just a calendar reminder I'd forgotten to delete. I stared at the screen for a long second, then smiled and swiped it away. I didn't win anything. I just stopped losing. 3 more months passed. Work became easier. Life felt lighter. Even Sarah noticed. You look different, she said one morning, sliding a report across my desk. Like you finally slept. I did, I told her. For about 3 months straight. She laughed softly. Guess honesty paid off, huh? Eventually, I said. That afternoon, another envelope appeared in my mail slot, no return address, same handwriting. Inside was a short message. I'm leaving the city. Trying to be better. I hope you are, too. No guilt. No manipulation. Just an ending, a quiet full stop. I folded the note once and dropped it into the drawer. With the old invoice, not sentiment, just closure. That night, my apartment was quiet. Not the heavy quiet of suspicion or heartbreak, just calm. Earned calm. I poured myself a glass of bourbon, stood at the window, and watched the city lights pulse like steady breathing. For the first time, silence didn't feel like a warning. It felt like peace. In the end, Brielle wanted honesty, and she got it. Not in the poetic, forgiving way she imagined, but in the only language that never lies. Numbers, paper, silence. The bill wasn't revenge. It was a statement. Paid in full. Her way. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Every click helps us bring more real stories to life.